Awesome. Here we go.
Success.
Hey, everybody. Thank you. This is Dennis O'Donovan with ProfitCom. Thanks for joining. I want to introduce my friend Greg Plum. Greg is the owner of Plum UC, certified CompTIA instructor, certified orchestrator of Partnernomics, fractional CRO and partner executive, having worked with over 45 clients, longtime channel leader, author, public speaker, top 50 global influencer on ecosystems, and most importantly, he's a good buddy. Damn, dude, I'm out of breath reading.
Keep going. I love it. I never hear this kind of good stuff. I'll take it.
So just to give a little background, I ran into Greg earlier this year, and we were talking about just how the shift post pandemic, the shift in the way people purchase. And that's sort of Greg's specialty. Just to add another layer in there, I first met Greg many moons ago when another pretty big event happened. And that was 9/11. Greg was with the conference group. And so we sold a whole lot of conferencing because nobody wanted to fly. But what that illustrates is, I guess, how certain things can happen that cause a shift in the way people purchase and the way people do business. So we are recording this. So if you can't, we've got some folks here. Great. Thank you for being here. And for the ones that can't, we're going to go ahead and get this recording out. Please share it. It's something that anybody can use, and it's industry agnostic. So without further ado, Greg, take us to what you got for us. I appreciate it.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Dennis. I appreciate it. And I will say, look, I'm a channel guy through and through, and we're gonna talk about is kind of channel evolved. That's what this is all about, because in the whole concept of ecosystem, it's really channel to the nth degree, and it's gotten way more complicated. But as a result of that, that complication breeds opportunity, and that's really what this is all about. So, yeah, and we've been friends, colleagues, coworkers, partner, vendor, however you want to go. I don't like the vendor word, for over 2 decades. Is that not crazy? That's just mind blowing. But that right there, in and of itself, that's power of channel. That's why channel. My wife and kids still have no idea what I do. They have no clue what I do, but we know the power of channel, what it's all about. And frankly, the channel is the reason we're both sitting here together right now in this session. So with that, let's talk about, you already talked about way more about me than I am comfortable even hearing, but I've been doing it a long time. And my best accolade right here is that Dennis and I have been buddies for 2 decades, which is a good thing, and counting. So here's what I do. I work fractionally with different founders, usually SaaS players, CEO, CRO type role. When they say they want to start a channel, first thing that they want, and why would you not want to have a channel, right? It's scalable, variable cost. It gets you into markets that you would not be able to necessarily touch by yourself. So it makes perfect sense. The first question that people ask typically when they look to build a channel is, who can sell my stuff? It's the first question. It's like, okay, think about it. Your product's like, okay, I want to build a partner program. Who can sell my stuff? Right? Well, guess what? That's the wrong question to ask, really. What we want to ask is more, who is my target customer? Right. And Dennis, you and I had this conversation several times. You're like, who your target is. And you have a few different ones, but you start there and then you start working backwards. Well, what does that mean? And then the whole reason you're all here, probably because you saw a cool race car, right? It's all about the, what does this mean and how does this tie in? Well, it is an ecosystem. There is basically a whole, think about when you walk in the woods. What's an ecosystem? It's all those different entities and how they interact. You pull one out and it changes the whole structure. But let's look classically. All right, let's just look at when you're marketing, sales marketing, and you're going to build your business. Right, we know there's 3 ways to build to grow. You build, buy, or partner. Right, I'm a huge advocate of partner because of the reasons we already said. Channel, long term, it's an annuity that you're building. It's variable cost. It scales quite well. And I'll tell you what, I learned about channel probably, Dennis, not too much before you and I met. When I was at conference group, I was hired on as the first, it was a startup. I was the first sales guy. And I realized pretty quick, I was a pretty bad sales guy. It's just not a good direct transactional sales guy. But I knew there were a lot of them out there. There were a lot of dentists out there that could do it really well. Well, not a lot. There was only one dentist, but there are a lot of folks out there that are looking to sell these solutions, and they did it very effectively. Our superpower, in my mind, was we were the platform, and the challenge was there is finding the right partners. So that's why I'm sitting here today. When we're building our business, and let's say we're going to, whatever we're doing, we're sales and marketing, we've got an ICP or two or three in mind. When I say that, that's your ideal customer profile or persona, however you want to call it. That's who you're targeting. That's who you want to buy your stuff, whatever it is. It could be anything, a widget, it could be a service, a subscription, consulting, whatever, it doesn't matter. So in typical traditional methods, we got our eye on the prize. The prize is the driver, right? The driver is the customer. That's who we want to talk to. Now, this is what a direct selling methodology looks like. That's all we're doing. We're laser focused. That's who we're looking at. But what we're talking about is really kind of evolving and looking at the bigger picture, the ecosystem, if you will. When a driver, a Formula One driver pulls into the pit, this is what happens. They get swarmed by 20 or more professionals, right? Trusted advisors. These guys are known entities that have a single job with a common goal of getting that driver back out on the track as soon as possible so he can cross that line safely and hopefully first, right? So the challenge here is to try to figure out who these players are. So obviously it's going to be easier. You think there's more points of presence, right, surrounding the driver than there's only one driver. So the message, the methodology here is to say, well, how do we turn that in our favor? How do we make that work for us? And that's the whole concept of ecosystem, understanding an ecosystem, having an ecosystem strategy. And it's become, look, it's not synonymous with me with channel. I think of channel is much more direct, right? It's much more bilateral, bidirectional. Ecosystem is way more complicated. Think of the highways, like the roads where they all they're all intertwined. That's what this is like. So the challenge is trying to figure out to make heads or tails out of it, figure out who these players are and how you can work with them. That is the whole concept around ecosystem strategy. So let's dig in a little bit. What does this mean? All right, well, if we've got our customer, who are these other players? And I'm going to talk generics. And then Dennis, I'm going to give you, I'm going to use a CPA firm. Hopefully somebody here has worked with a CPA firm, or maybe it's a target customer, or at least it's an example so you can see exactly what I mean. So we're going to first talk theoretical, and then we're going to get real specific. Sound okay? You good with that?
Good to me.
Cool. So just some examples. Who is impacting the customer? Think about this. That customer, the driver, they have a job to do. In doing their job, who is impacting them? Who's helping them? Spin it another way. Who do they trust? Who does that customer trust already before even hearing about you? You're not important. And by the way, you are not important. I am not important. The whole thing that's important in all of this is through the lens of the customer. And then we're going to step it back one. You have your ICP, your customer, and then you have your IPP, your ideal partner profile. That is really the whole concept that we want to focus on with an ecosystem strategy. So you've got marketplaces. That could be what? It could be Salesforce. It could be Microsoft, whatever. They're already playing in some marketplace. Well, think about that. If they're a Salesforce shop, doesn't matter what they do. If they're a Salesforce shop, they have somebody that they've probably interacted with. They have some kind of skin in the game with Salesforce, so that theoretically you can say, what do I do? Do I do anything that can interface, augment Salesforce? All right. They have organizations they may belong to. Look, I started out my career at MBNA. I don't know if anybody's ever heard of it. It's been out of commission for a while, or they're bought by Bank of America.
Credit cards.
Yeah. And you tell you what, look, here's how strong that culture was. I've got my officer precepts card still sits by me, and it's not here just as a prop for today. It's that strong of a culture. They built their empire on affinity marketing. So yeah, we sold credit cards, but you would never see a television ad or a radio commercial in mass media. That's not what we did. The way we sold it was through associations, Ducks Unlimited, National Education Association, trial lawyers, pick it. They're already have an affinity. So the success rate was significantly higher than just going in cold. Same concept here. So figure out your customer. Do they belong to any groups? Do those groups have conferences? You should be there. I mean, we spent a lot of time on the road back then when we were selling for MBNA. I remember probably the biggest one I ever went to was American Dental Association. It was a massive, massive conference, but super effective. We've got, hold on, integrators. They're going to work with consultants. They're going to work with folks like Denis for their technology. So the question is, how can you work with Denis, make Denis's job easier, or make him more full service when he's helping his customer? We've got, hold on, influencers. Now think about that. Denis, do you have anybody you listen to, right, like on a regular basis, that's like a industry pundit or somebody that's trusted and followed?
I think the master agencies do a pretty good job of having podcasts and things like that for learning about the industry and continual learning. They do a real nice job of that.
Yeah, and then what they also do is they bring in celebrities. A lot of these. I'm just trying to think who's Malcolm Gladwell was at one of the recent. Did you see that one?
Mm-mm.
I forget where he was, but Malcolm Gladwell. He's the Outliers. I mean, he's ridiculous. So influencer, you want to figure out, who does that customer pay attention to? Personally, Seth Godin, love Seth Godin. I actually look at his post every morning. So if somebody wants to get to me, theoretically, they could get to me through him. I would pay attention to something he's putting out. So I have seen products that I would not have seen because he promoted it.
Okay.
Consultants. Look, most businesses have some kind of consultant. They may even have a sales coach. They may have a business consultant. They may have a life coach. It's important to know who's impacting that customer, because again, you might find a way to dovetail into that, whoever's got their ear, and figure out a way to help them tell their story. Let's not forget about competitors. The term, it's not new, co-opetition, we've all heard it. I don't think it's ever been more real or applicable or relevant than today, because here's what happens. We have a crowded space. All these products they're being pummeled, like the customer's being pummeled. There are all kinds of options, right? We're now working with a consumer that's smarter than they've ever been, access to more information, and unfortunately, they're inundated with options. So the challenge is, how do we differentiate? How do we stand out? Well, if you know your product like the back of your hand, that's not enough. You need to know your product. You need to know your competitor's product. You need to know the landscape. You need to know trends. I mean, it is tough. It used to be much easier. Remember, Denis, the whole term speeds and feeds, features, benefits, dog and pony. We could
Yep.
sell that way. You can't sell that way anymore. People aren't listening to that, but they are listening to their network. They're already those that are already on the inside. So the philosophy, the strategy here is figure out who they are and help them better serve that customer. Competitors, Denis, back in the day, we know the big names in conferencing, and I'm not going to lie, I really didn't like my competition. I really didn't. I was all about my brand, and I was pretty fiercely competitive. I mean, yeah, we would go to the events, the conferences, and all, but I just wasn't. I didn't embrace the competition. Today, I think it makes way more sense. And that was an immature mentality. It was immature, I admit it. The mature mentality is to really understand that the competition, find out what their strengths are, do a SWOT analysis. Where are they strong? Where are they weak? If they're weak in something, can that be an opportunity? Can you bolt on? And I talk to all the time. I was talking to a cloud VoIP provider the other day, and they have a very significant competitor that has a weakness. They have a blind spot. Well, this smaller shop fills that. there's an opportunity. Now, will it turn into something? I'm not sure, but that's the type of conversation you want to have. That competitor is probably already in there. You definitely want to know that, right? If a competitor's in your client's ear, you want to know about that. You want to find out where they're succeeding and hopefully, where they're failing. Maybe you help them, maybe you try to unseat them. But knowing that they're there and they're a part of this equation is huge. And then
Yeah,
this,
it's interesting you said that. Because I had a buddy who's in a managed service space, and they had a very small window of what they do, but there's a whole bunch of things out, so they punt on a lot of things. And I was like, don't get rid of that. You've spent the money to market to them. You spent the money to do all that stuff. If it comes in, and it's not 100%. You find somebody that you can turn that over to and potentially have a revenue stream, and it's a win-win for everybody.
yeah, and I think the key there, I think you and I had the conversation. I can't remember. I was with somebody talking about mailbox money. Was it, were you and I having that conversation?
Yeah, mailbox money then.
Yeah, yeah. So that's interesting. That term's been around a while. And then theoretically, yeah, look, if there's a consultant, let's say they're working with I don't know, they have an attorney, and you lock arms with this attorney, you guys you can somehow add some value to that, and then you're like, hey, look, I'm gonna pay you, assuming this is legal, assume it's illegal. We have a referral fee or whatever. That's great. And that could be effective. But for it to be truly effective is you need to find a way to make what you do make that entity, that other person's business stronger, his core business, not mailbox, not ancillary. But if you can make it core, your offering, that's where the magic starts to happen. And then look, whoever we have on the, listening to this, you could be a sales guy in the tech field. You could be a marketer. You could be an MSP. We are all part of that ecosystem. The challenge is to find out who that ICP is, and then step back, look at that other realm, like all the different players. That's who we want to get to know. And when somebody right now says to me to sell something, my brain immediately goes to who is already selling into them. Who are they working with? It doesn't go to, well, here's my product, and here's my product can help. Here's how my product helps that driver. Why would I do that when I could think, here's how my product helps this person, this person impact that driver? Because guess what else? Each of those entities have their own networks. And that becomes that pull effect. That's kind of that force multiplier. Does that make sense, Dennis?
Yeah, no, it makes all sense in the world. It's a deeper dive instead of going, you know, I remember the days of knocking on doors and the one call close back in the day, that's just not happening anymore. And people are purchasing different, they're looking at things different, they're evaluating things differently. So it makes sense that we need to look at partnerships differently too. And
Well,
you had mentioned it was the right partner, right? You said something different. What was it called?
aligned.
Aligned partners. That
An
was the word.
aligned partner. So here, I'll give this to you. So this is one of my favorite things, take it or leave it. But everyone's talking about AI. To me, AI has its place in partnerships. But here's where it is. To me, AI means alignment, and influence. That's really how we get our work done. We find the partners that have two things. They've got the same ICP that we have. If they have a different ICP, it doesn't matter how good of our relationship. Like Dennis, if you and I were selling to different audiences back in the day, it wouldn't matter how great, how much fun we had, eating crab cakes and getting together and chatting. It wouldn't matter if we had a different ICP. The fact is, you and I were targeting the exact same ICP. That's why it was effective. That's the key. So when you're looking for partners, you have to make sure, you have to be crystal clear on who your ICP is. If you're not, that's going to be a miss, right? You're going to be, you start there, figure out exactly who you best, and here's what I hear often. Hey, who do you serve? Who's your target customer? Oh, we can work with anybody. That's a terrible answer. It's a terrible answer. Of course you can work with anybody. Who do you best serve? Whose business changes exponentially by working with you? Who
Hey,
do you have?
can you repeat the last little bit? Because there was a bit of a, it might be my internet. Anybody who can sell internet. So it was a little slow. So your recording might have been fine if it was
Well,
coming on.
and I'll say it again. I mean, because it's important, right? Of course, you can sell to anybody. That doesn't make them your ICP, your ideal customer. You want to focus on your ideal customer. Who is better because they work with you. And who do you best serve based on, you've got your new, all services and products have their nuances. You best tailored for a certain audience. I'll give you an example. I was working with a video collaboration tool. Could it work for anybody? Absolutely. And that's what they said. That's what the founder said. Oh, we could serve anybody. But guess what? Their unique value was they were HIPAA compliant. Ah, okay. Now you have a tool that gives you, that starts to set the tone. Okay, this can be a standalone. It can differentiate in the healthcare space. So then what we said, all right, now where are the channels of partners that sell into the healthcare space? So that's what we did. And we went to one of the big boys. We got the product onboarded at one of the big boys. And then we, instead of saying, okay, let's carpet bomb it out to everybody, we said, okay, now let's look at the subset of your agent base that sells into healthcare. And now let's start sniping. Let's just one at a time. It's spear phishing. Make sense?
Yeah. Here's a question I have for you.
Sure.
How do you stay relevant? Because I have had lots of conversations with potential partners, and when we're in the room together, we're sitting across from each other at lunch or whatever. Everybody loves the concept, but then everybody goes and we're all, like you said at the very beginning, we're all busy. We're all chasing shiny objects. We're all doing whatever. How is there a cadence that you would recommend that is persistent enough yet not annoying for developing those partnerships and cultivating those relationships? Do you
Yeah,
have
I
any
think
insight into that?
I do. And it's not so much the cadence, Dennis, as it is the message.
Okay.
Um, it's around being able to have them see the value, seeing through their lens. What you do is going to help them not make mailbox money, but impact their core business. They will think of you then. If it is ancillary, tangential mailbox money, they will think of you when you're in front of them. And they're going to be excited. The problem is they go back to work, they go do their thing, they get caught up in their business. So if you find a way to tell your story that impacts their business, then they're going to think of you and you're not going to have to chase them down. That to me is what keeps you relevant. Now, beyond that, in the general terms, how do you stay relevant? You need to be more educated than a very educated consumer and partner. That's the chat, right? Because in every one of our deals, you've got now, so Dennis, you have one customer, but your providers, your underlying providers have two customers. They've got the end user and they got you, right?
Mhm.
To keep you happy, right? You're the annuity. They want to make sure you're happy so you come back to the well. So to stay relevant, you have to know, you have to be able to speak intelligently about AI. You can't say, oh, that's stuff. I don't know. You can't do that, right? You have to embrace it and figure out exactly what impact it's having and where the biggest threats or the risks are in industry today, just so you can be that trusted resource. And again, you could be you, Dennis, right in the front lines with the customer, or it could be your providers that have you in the mix, and you together are locking arms. But you all have to be speaking the same language, and you have to be smarter than the customer, more educated with this technology than the customer. Otherwise, they're not. Why would they trust you? But that's a really good question. How do you stay relevant? Is there a cadence? No. If you have the right message, cadence takes care of itself.
Sure.
Okay, this is great. That's classroom example, right? It's real easy when you're sitting in a classroom and you're saying, oh, well, here, this is the way it works. Let's do a real life example, right? I threw a couple of things at you, but let's do a real life example. ICP of a 15-person CPA firm. Pretty specific, right? Why? Because that's what you have to do. You have to be specific when you're figuring out which audience you serve optimally. Could I serve, using this example, could I serve a 15-person law firm, or could I serve a 1,000-person CPA firm? Probably. But we need to figure out what is our core, right? Our core client. And then it gives us some clarity. Now what we do is we say, all right, now I say scrutinize. Let's scrutinize this client. And here's where you start. To do all of this stuff, go to your customer base. Find the 3 or 5 best customers. A good customer one, obviously, is one, well, and you enjoy working with them. You're making money. It's a healthy relationship, and you don't cringe when you see them emailing or calling you. Those are good customers. Now what you want to do is basically you want to find more of them. So I'm giving you some tips on how to find more of them. Find who's impacting them. You may already know this, and there might be people listening who are going, "Yeah, I've already thought of this." But I can tell you this conversation, this concept, I've had it with dozens of CROs, and this is the single concept where usually the light bulb goes off. When they're like, "I never thought of it that way." It's just a change in perspective. You pull yourself out of the middle. If you're thinking of yourself and how you can sell, I'm sorry, who can sell for you, that's an ecosystem, right? You put yourself in the middle. That's not what we want to do. We want to put the customer in the middle, look through their lens. And then, like I said, that's when you usually see the light bulbs going off. All right. So this example right here, 15-person CPA firm. Dennis, have you ever worked with, I'm hoping you have you ever worked with this type of customer? Maybe it's not CPA, this size firm or professional services firm in any way?
Sure.
Okay. So some examples. What we want to know is, who are these people sitting around here? Marketplaces. All right. So they very well may be using Salesforce, for their CRM. They probably are a Microsoft shop, which means they may have a Microsoft partner. We should know that. They might be using, if they're a smaller shop, maybe they're not using Salesforce, maybe they're using HubSpot. These are some examples of different marketplaces that already have their ear. And if you find a way, I'll give you an example. I was working with a sales optimization, a deal management software built on Salesforce. So obviously our target audience with those certain clients and customers in a certain size customer, certain size complexity, without getting too specific, but they had to have Salesforce. So that was my eliminating factor right out of the gate. If they're using HubSpot or Zoho or something else, it's just not a fit. Am I walking away from business? Yes. But I'm focusing on where I'm going to be most effective. Now, when we start to do that, we say Salesforce. I say, okay, guess what? They probably have a consultant because Salesforce is incredibly complicated and they usually have somebody helping them. That's the key. You figure out who is helping them with their deployment, or maybe if they're modifying their integration, their Salesforce instance, that there's a whole channel, right? If you know how to bolt onto that, there's a whole channel of partners out there that you could theoretically arm with a new tool, help them monetize that existing customer and be stickier, right? So there's a whole new route to market with that because they've got their whole customer base as well. So when I hear somebody's using Salesforce, I get excited. If I hear they're using Microsoft, I get excited because I know there's a whole channel that we could go and dissect and try to find a route to market to that customer. Member organizations. So CPA firms, I've mentioned, this is how MBNA did their thing. This is how their entire business was built. Find them. Look, Dennis, when I was with Conference Group, we had a few of them. We worked with a local state bar association. We came up with a program because we knew that attorneys were using conferencing for depositions. So it made perfect sense. Okay, let's come up with a program specifically for this association. It benefits the association. It benefits the members. And it benefited us, obviously, because of the affinity. So that becomes a win-win-win when you find a way to work with these associations. It gives you events to attend, specifically with a product that's been crafted for that audience, for that membership. I love member organizations because they do have conferences, and that's where you can start. I mean, when I was with Conference Group, we spent 10 years at what was the Fraternity Executives Association, because we knew fraternities used. I think it was, Dennis, that was my way of staying relevant in the fraternal world. I was in a fraternity in college. I think I couldn't give it up. So I try to find a way, how can I work with these guys? And it was lucrative. It was an incredible route to market because these guys they had chapter consultants out in the field. We knew they were using conferencing, made perfect sense. So I don't know, got lucky or whatever, but got to the right people and then started going to the conference. We spent 10 years at this conference, year after year after year, to build a pretty healthy practice specifically to the fraternity executives members. Consultants, right? Every business has a consultant. Even if it's a small shop, I've got a friend that runs a small MSP. He uses a consultant that helps him with sales strategy, marketing strategy, This is somebody has his ear. They trust that entity. So if I can find a way to make that entity, that consultant, better at serving that customer, there's another route to market for us. Questions, Dennis?
No, I think it makes a lot of sense. I'm actively trying to look at some affinity programs right now. I do have a business coach, um, and I think we were talking about Salesforce. There's a couple specific use cases for some of the vendors we have that are tied into Salesforce. But to your point, you shared with me a really cool story about an area, a situation where you thought that the
Might fail.
Salesforce. I know, and I'm going to call you out on it because I love it because you learn from failure, right? And
Yeah.
I've made that same mistake where I went in there thinking this was going to be more valuable than it really was, and you get the want moment where it's kind of very anyhow. Just can you share a little bit about
I
that?
can share it. Yeah, it's been put. I'm not ashamed because it was.
Sorry, I threw you under the bus. My
No,
bad.
man, it's all good. So, yeah, I was for this Salesforce client, this ISV that built a software specific for Salesforce. I was able to get in front of a room of Salesforce professionals, consultants. I don't know, there's like 20 in the room, something like that. And I was invited in for lunch, and I got to present. And that was an opportunity. Look, I know enough to not do the dog and pony because I know that doesn't go well. That's not how you sell these days. It's much more the consultative. It's open up the dialogue, and that's table stakes. Here's where I dropped the ball. Going through, and I even did a nice little demo, and I pulled on the CEO, through video, and it was great. We had everybody was kind of like drinking the Kool-Aid, and I was feeling pretty good about it. And then I got to the point where my proudest moment, I thought, was when I shared the compensation, because we negotiated a really strong compensation package for these guys. And I thought they'd be excited because usually in the Salesforce ecosystem, you're looking at a 15%, 10 or 15% one-time payment. We negotiated, or the CEO was generous enough to have a recurring, it wasn't evergreen, but it's a recurring commission, 40%. So 4x what these guys are used to seeing. So of course I'm excited to put that out in the forefront. Literally, I said that, and of course I'm expecting high fives, people jumping up, crickets. And it kind of threw me off a little bit. I kept going. And then I went to the managing partner who invited me in. I said, what did I say? He said, they're not going to see that money. That's not what drives them. That's not a KPI or an OKR or whatever you want to call it. That's not how they're judged. They're based on, project complexity and duration, how long they're involved. So that is what would drive them. We're all driven by how we're compensated. So that's a miss on my part. I assumed they would be compensated the way I would have been compensated back in there, the way you're compensated, Dennis. Not the case. So you want to know that
How would you have done that differently? Would you have gone to the principal who is the owner and made that pitch only to them because they're the one that's going to see that money?
um
The one that's going to take a project which has a defined start and defined end, and they're saying, okay, instead of that defined project, you now create a recurring revenue stream beyond that. So was that what you would have done in that situation?
Yeah, I would have done this in a two-tier approach because it's certainly their money's going to flow into the company. So yes, for them, they're going to care. But I would have a separate pitch for the team because that's not the way they're compensated and judged and rewarded. I would focus more on, well, how are they rewarded? What is important to them? Well, the complexity. Okay, well, guess what? We're going to add or duration, how much more value as a Salesforce professional, they're now going to have another tool to better serve that customer. And it's not for every customer. If your customer looks like this, or this, here's when you think of us. And guess what? I'm going to make you more effective, stickier when you work with them. And it's going to be more complicated. It's an additional, it's another plugin. It's another thing to pay attention to. These guys, they get a little frustrated sometimes when you make it too, this is terrible. But if it's too easy, it doesn't add, their value is like, well, if they can do it themselves, they don't really need me. So you just need to understand what's going to motivate them. And that was a classic miss on my part. And I'm happy to put that out there.
Well, no, and I think you learn from your misses, and two, it taught you that you're not going to do that again, right?
Oh, there's no way. And not only that, I do talk about it quite a bit because I don't think it was an idiotic mistake. It wasn't out of ignorance. Well, it was out of ignorance. It wasn't out of being unintelligent. It was being ignorant to the situation. So yeah, you're right. That ignorance is gone. That will never not happen again. So okay, I'm going to give you. We're wrapping up here. This is kind of the recipe to follow when you're doing this. When you're looking at your own base and you say, okay, you know what? I like the concept. Maybe I want to try this. I'm going to, just have some kind of a pilot. What you want to do is you have your ICP. If you don't have your ICP, you got to start there first. Figure out who you serve better than anybody else, who can't really function as well as they do today without you. That's your ICP. Do you have them in your base already? Probably. All right. Now what we want to do is now I say scrutinize. It sounds like a negative. It's not. It means let's roll up our sleeves, get to know them, their business inside and out. The job to be done, who is helping them? Who, and then you're going to see these different entities that they're working with. Now what we want to do is say, okay, just like we looked before, this will open up new potential routes to market. Who has their ear? How can I help the person that has their ear? Can I help that person do their job better? If I can, that is going to be motivation because we're impacting that partner's core business in serving their client. Figure out where you fit in. In value prop, this is a big thing with, CompTIA. One of the differentiations we make in the classes that I teach between business prop and value prop. Business proposition, it's all about the money. Value proposition, how you make that situation better, how you help that partner better serve their customer. When you can figure that out, that's kind of where the magic happens. And then the money takes care of itself in that point. Now you have ideally just a few new potential partners. Now you double down. Look, here's the type of partner that I work with. Here's how I bolt on. This is a story I tell. Now let me go find more of them. And that is an aligned partner. And that seeking that alignment out of the gate, making sure you have the same ICP and the business models fit, right? If you only have an agent model and they require a reseller, that's a miss, right? You need to make sure the business models fit as well. And that's kind of it. I mean, I love this graphic because this really points to, unless you look really closely, you see somebody kind of dogging it there. But ideally, what this is a team, everybody rowing in the same direction. If that's what a good, solid partnership looks like, where you have everybody common goal rowing in the same direction to get you across the finish line. This is nirvana. This is what we gun for. But I can tell you statistically, less than half of the partnerships that start out actually make it beyond the 18-month mark. So they definitely, the chance to increase the success is on the front end, ensuring you have the alignment and you're ensuring you have a strategy to enable that partner, educate the partner, arm them so they can be effective in representing your stuff. Just say, hey, send me anybody and I'll get you a check. It's just not going to work. You may get a quick win here or there, but it's not going to be sustainable. All right, Dennis, that's it for my story. Other than we do have a bonus that I'm going to throw out there, I'm going to offer. But do you have any questions before we get to that?
I do not. I do want to be mindful of people's time because I think we just
Oh,
want to.
yeah, yeah.
But we're gonna. And what I did find out is that we didn't properly open up the chat. So the technology guy who's struggling with technology. So
We got to get somebody else in here.
I will gladly answer anyone who's here or anyone who's listening. Please email me and I'll connect you with Greg and get you any questions answered. So my apologies on setting that up wrong. There was a button that we didn't click.
All good. All right. Okay, so I mentioned, so one of the things, what I do by day now, besides having fun conversations like this or teaching, an advisory firm. So basically, we help companies scale through building partner programs. So this is a freebie. It's a video course, 3 hours of content. I would say go get it. You could even get, if you want, if you're not a partnership pro, this is just a tool that you want to build your business, then I'd say don't worry about the certification, but the knowledge is going to be invaluable. I would suggest taking a look at it. Cost you nothing. If you are a partner pro, you work in the channel, I would say go get the certification. It's $100 to take the test. I mean, I don't see any of that money. It's just to get the cert. And at that point, you have a certification from Partnernomics is the only university accredited partnering program in the world. So it's got a little bit of street cred there. So grab that. There's the QR code. Take a picture of it. You can go sign up and get the download that free course. It gets you access to the platform. Just kick it around. It's fascinating. You know, I've been in the channel for 24 years. I was only introduced to partnernomics about a year ago. And it made me change directions just because of it was developed by a channel guy at Sprint about 10 years ago, and he saw a gap in the industry. And anyway, this was part of his dissertation. He turned into a business. So that's what partnernomics is all about. And then, by the way, so here, you want to find me. I love connecting with people. My wife's sick and tired of hearing about partnerships and ecosystems. I need a new audience. I needed new people to chat with. So if you any of this rings a bell, or piques your interest, find me on LinkedIn. Would love to connect. And that's all I got, Dennis.
Well, buddy, I appreciate you taking the time. I just, for the people that are there and the people that are watching this later, we're all trying to be better for our customers. We're all trying to support our families. We're all trying to be relevant. We're all trying to, and if the way purchasing is changing, then maybe we have to shift the way we look at it, or we run the risk of being irrelevant. So I appreciate you doing this, man. This was great. Thank you for all the attendees. Sorry for my technical challenges there, but yeah, reach out to me if you have any questions, and we'll push this out. And Greg, I really appreciate you taking the time to tell us more about ecosystems.
My pleasure, Dennis. Thanks for the invite. It's good to be here. Good to see you, and always good to work with you.
Appreciate you, buddy. Take care. Thanks again. You want to stop the recording?